Hello, and welcome back to Protocol Bash. In today's part 2, we are going to be covering episodes 11 through 20 of Season 1 of the Magnus Protocol. In lead up for Season 2's release on February 27th, I guess that's pretty much it. We'll just be chugging along. Like one of the previous earlier video, my co-host who would normally be with me, Hazel, is currently dying of the plague, as they call it. So it is just going to be me for this episode today, and hopefully part 3 we will be together once again to finish off this retelling and re-summarization of Season 1 of Protocol. And I hope you all will enjoy this part 2 as much as you enjoyed part 1. Do all the things that you do that YouTube has like, subscribe, check out links in the description for the various links to the Rusty Quill YouTube channel and episodes in Season 1, just so you can, go check them out, because, it's cool stuff that they do. That's why I'm doing all of this. So with that out of the way, please enjoy part 2 of Protocol Bash. Beginning with Mag Protocol episode 11, titled Mark, we hear a phone dial-up, and we hear Celia out in the streets on a busy motorway. We hear her remark that something like this has happened before she apparently has no signal, and she says, "Hold on, Jack, I'm on my way." That then suddenly cuts out, and we are back in the OIAR, where Alice comes in bringing food and drink for everybody besides Gwen. Sam ends up mentioning to Celia that he kind of feels bad that going to the ruins of the Magnus Institute Manchester was kind of a waste of time. And Alice also remarks that she feels like she has been being watched ever since they left there, and she had bad, nightmares, dreams about it. Or I suppose that would be dreams all day, since they work the night shift and sleep during the day. But regardless, moving on to the case. So the case opens with Gordon J. An email address, hello@padstowgroundworks.co.uk, emailing government employee Alison Leshy, g.leshy@cornwallcouncil.gov.uk, on January 6th of 2020, regarding the exhumation of the local Padstow Civil Cemetery in Cornwall, confirming that the dig has begun on schedule. They also did loads of testing on the grounds near the cliff's edge, meaning that the cemetery itself resides on said cliff. Gordon mentions that several units have already been transferred, and that David, the medical examiner, is pleased with the process. Gordon remarks about the lack of protesters that Allison was concerned would be appearing, continuing that it helps that there hasn't been a burial there for over a century, offhandedly insinuating that most of the people buried there are sailors. Gordon thanks Allison for hiring him and his crew for the dig, as they are local and have encountered the cemetery for their entire lives. Now that the cliff is finally giving up the ghost, insinuating instability, it will provide closure. Gordon sends another email to Allison on January 12th, subject line reading, "Exhumanization pause." Gordon opens, saying that David suggested he update Allison on progress, as the dig has halted due to waiting for an expert to come. Gordon gives context, saying that the containers the units were buried in are of varied quality, with some still being intact to transport, and others so rotted that the coffins were useless, requiring bodies to be transported in their burial shrouds. After commenting on handling human remains directly, and David's guidance, Gordon mentions a specific body from one of the graves. It seems too well preserved for its probable age, and the corpse had a complex tattoo on its back of a sailing ship across an open sea towards an open horizon. David insisted upon a second opinion regarding the body and tests regarding its age, as they may have a potential crime scene on their hands if the body is younger than average. This would also shut down the dig site. Gordon says that the break is much needed, that the digging is starting to get to him. He says that the waves are closer and getting closer, and that if he was a sailor buried there, then he would take comfort in it, and he hastily ends the email. The next email is sent on January 14th, stating with Gordon that at Allison if she could talk to David, he is still working on the body and has stopped answering Gordon's email. After finally getting to him on the phone, he says David didn't even sound like he was in a rush to finish the job. While he's worried about salt water and tattoos, Gordon is still paying the workers during the pause. Gordon says that it's almost enough to make you dream of sailing away, just like that tattoo. He comments that he had another look at the photos David sent, in that he may have been wrong about its contents. At first, it appeared to be warm, a crew sailing towards a sunrise, but looking again, he realized that the sun is lower and to believe that there's a shape in the water behind the ship. Gordon mentions that they may have gotten the resistance Allison mentioned, someone covered in tattoos, the most significant one being a snake going up their arm. Visited the site asking questions about the body. The visitor claimed to be a big deal on the internet. They claimed that the tattoo is an Oscar Jarrett, and that it is a big deal to some people within that community. In relation to Sutherland MacDonald, Gordon comments that they were creeping everyone out. Gordon says Allison should visit the site again, insisting that the salt air will help her mood. He comments how unusual it is that while he's lived there his entire life, spending time on the cliffs, he realizes it can still reach you, and that waves crashing so loud that you can hear them in your dreams. Next, on January 16th, Gordon offers condolences to Alice regarding David, saying that this kind of event will always hit hard, even if he's just a colleague. He consoles her, saying that he will be with the sea now, and that the deep will care for his bones. The next day, on January 17th, with the subject line reading David's passing, Gordon opening with an impompous and sarcastic response to Allison, apologizing that saying he was unaware that his emails were coming off as unprofessional. He says his thoughts and opinions on maritime matters will no longer be included, and asks if he could be provided with authorization to follow up with the body with the assigned medical examiner. The day after that, January 18th, Gordon insists that he was not mocking Allison but is frustrated, as he is emailing her about the job but is seemingly being deemed unprofessional. It is the best he can manage, as he is not sleeping due to strange dreams, shapes in the water, and that. He pushes and says that he needs Allison to contact the examiner again, as the examiner is dragging his feet, saying that he dug him up, so he is my responsibility. He needs to see it. He needs to know what is in the water. 2 days later, on January 20th, the subject line, examiner's office break-in, with Gordon insisting that he didn't do it, blaming the person covered in tattoos. He saw them hanging around the office while he was obsessively waiting to see what was in the water. He becomes enraged at them, saying that he knows where they're staying and that they are wrong to think they deserve when it belongs to the deep. Gordon says if they try to stop him, the ocean will claim them all. He can taste the salt and spray. He is waiting in the water. And then we get the text that the final email does not send, as the address hello@padsgroundsworks.co.uk is no longer in service. I also forgot to mention this at the top of the case. This Chester, this is our boy Chester. I forgot to mention this at the top of the case, but reading this one out is our boy Chester. Assumedly maybe Johnny Sims, you shanked, as it's called. After the case ends, Sam asks Alice if there's a way to cross-reference to different other cases, as he remembers the one in the last part about ink. Alice reminds Sam not to investigate further before saying that there isn't really a way to connect the cases. It's at this point where Gwen bursts into the office, saying that there was a delay on the tube. This is when Alice points out to Gwen that it doesn't look like she's been sleeping very well, to which Gwen asks to be left alone as she has a lot of work to get to do. This is when Gwen sees the coffee and asks if it's for her. Alice hesitates for a moment, and Sam asks, you like mocha? Gwen says yes and takes the mocha and begins to drink it, thanking Alice for getting her coffee. Gwen then asks whereabouts Lena is at. Sam saying that she is in her office. After he asks why, Gwen says that she needs a debrief on what happened on her assignment last night. This is when Celia rushes in, apologizing for being so late, saying that there was an emergency at home. This is where we get that, lie, like that noise that we get when the people lie. Gwen then immediately confronts her about being late when Alice calls out Gwen's hypocrisy for just coming in a moment earlier. Gwen says an explanation for lateness is needed, and that she technically didn't need to provide hers for a subordinate. Celia attempts to cut in, but Alice stands her ground. Yes, that's right. Celia lies and says her radiator had sprung a leak, flooded the lounge. Gwen reprimands them all and goes into Lena's office. With that little part cutting out by Gwen saying, "I can't believe she drank your mocha." This is when I believe Lena's landline comes on, and Lena asks Gwen how the confrontation went last night. Gwen confronts her, asking what the hell she had just been through. Lena says she's assuming Gwen is asking about Mr. Bonzo. Gwen argues that the abomination she encountered was not Mr. Bonzo, that it had real skin. Lena knew what Mr. Bonzo looked like, as she had watched the Saturday 6, show that the Nigel guy, always had on as a kid. Lena says that while Mr. Bonzo is one of their more grotesque externals, he is a valued asset. Gwen comments that she could have almost died, and Lena said, but she didn't, meaning Gwen's passed the first part of her probation. Lena then congratulates her before saying that she could scream more in the future. It helps to cope with the job, and they usually like it. Just very interesting. Lena then tells Gwen that the envelope had a name and an address in it. Gwen asks who. Lena says she assumed she already worked that out. She tells Gwen to keep an eye out on the caseload and that it all will become clear later. When Gwen says she doesn't understand, Lena responds that she does. Gwen asks why. Lena says that why comes later, and that for now it's best to understand the what, and that she'll notify Gwen when the next externals assignment is. Before Gwen leaves, Lena tells her to get some sleep, that she looks dreadful. There's basically nothing else we know for this episode. It's just basically an exact continuation of, Saturday Night, Mag Protocol episode 10. Mag Protocol episode 12, Getting Off, which, if that title doesn't discourage you enough, it's another Mr. Bonzo episode. But before we get to all of that, Sam and Celia are in the back room while Celia looks for tea. Sam offers her his Assam tea, which he hid away so that it could not be stolen. Then he clumsily asks Celia out on a date, and Celia basically says that she's busy, but needs to sort some stuff out first, but agrees to meet at Leicester Square on Saturday at 6 for breakfast. Celia leaves as Alice enters to mock Sam for having absolutely no game. Sam then states that he is done. He is finished researching with the Magnus Institute Manchester, but still seems to have a little bit interest in the topic, as Alice is like, sure, but if I had, like an email saying, Samam MacLeod, read immediately, everything to know about Magnus Institute, that you wouldn't read it, right? And Sam goes, nope. But you don't, right? And that's when we cut to the case. This time being voiced by our boy Norris. This statement takes the form of an employer's liability insurance claim submitted from the Palace of Business named Soho Jacks, located on 9 Carlsley Street, London, with the infected employee being listed as one Miss Jordan Bennett. The claim lists all submitted reports before listing the ask price of £1.56 million sterling. The claim is being denied due to being fraudulent, pointing to the police reports and incident descriptions from Bennett as follows. Bennett is angry and filing the insurance claim at the recommendation of her lawyer in order to keep good faith with the company, even if she is already going to sue them. She says that she could apologize for her handwriting, but she blames it on Soho Jacks. Bennett began working at Jacks in spring of 2021 after graduating from the Flair Academy, calling Jack's the Soho Gentlemen's Club. She says that the club has dancers on the bottom 2 floors with VIP suites above, with a dedicated bouncer keeping both spaces separated. She outlines the rooms as quieter areas with their own bars for more private showings, before lamenting about the kinds of clientele. Being affluent men flaunting their wealth did not tip well. Oogled the dancers and disavowed their enjoyment of the dances while obviously taking pleasure in it. She says that this group wasn't the worst, just a bunch of heavy-set, middle-aged men with generic names like Ozzer or Rozer or whatever. Bennett assumes that they were part of an old-school rugby team. After some time, they started giving the groom gifts, standard items, until the groom spotted the last gift on the table, being an old yellow and purple kid's lunchbox. Nobody admitted to bringing it in, but the groom squealed with joy upon viewing it. Before opening the box and pulling out souvenir merch with the same yellow-purple design, the last souvenir was a cracked CD case. All the men cheered, and the best man asked Bennett if they could play the disc, revealing it to be Mr. Bonzo's On His Way, the theme song of the titular Mr. Bonzo. Bennett mentions her slight disdain for the mascot, saying it was before her time. Despite her annoyance, she gives in to the partygoers and plays the CD, saying that the bouncy tune was still loud enough to drown out the club speakers. The men started singing along to the lyrics. After a few minutes, Bennett attempted to turn off the player, only to find that the system would not stop, growing louder instead. This continued to the point at which the volume of the music rattled the bar's glassware. Even after she unplugged the speakers, the music grew only louder. Bennett heard a crash and a loud cheer from the party, rushing back into the room to find a large, bulbous figure filling the doorway. It doffed its hat and then pushed itself into the room, revealing itself as Mr. Bonzo. The party reacted with genuine cheer and slight hesitation, and Bennett assumed that this was a prank. One of the men exclaimed that Bonzo is Baz lap dance, and they fell onto the ground laughing. Bennett was enraged, not at the partygoers, but the doorman, Joey, who was not supposed to let intrusions into the VIP lounge, claiming that he's already let people in on accident once before, and it's a big safety precaution. She went to chew out both Joey and Mr. Bonzo before seeing a pair of boots at their side peeking out through one of the doorway, identifying them as Joey's and noting that they were not moving. Bonzo turned to look at Bennett and cheekily raised a finger to its mouth. The men started chanting Mr. Bonzo's name, surrounding him and the groom in a rough circle as the music grew louder and more distorted. Bennett attempted to use her walkie-talkie to call for help, only to hear the song playing from that speaker as well. Bennett screamed for them to stop as she called the police, but the protests rung on deaf ears. This is when Mr. Bonzo grabs the groom by the arms as they both swing rapidly together. All the men started laughing as Bonzo raised to his full height and, without warning, ripped the groom's arms clean from their sockets. Everyone was still laughing for a moment before one of the peoples and Bennett screaming as Mr. Bonzo ripped out the groom's lower jaw. Some of the men attempted to beat Mr. Bonzo with broken bottles and chairs, slashing at the preoccupied Mr. Bonzo, who gave them no mind. He then obliterated the body to a pulp before eating it whole. The music continued playing through speakers as Bonzo then turned to the group, tilting his head coquettishly and grinning with a full smile while chanting his name. Bennett says she does not remember what happened next, but that she dreams about it most nights. In them, Mr. Bonzo's digits through the rest of the crowd to get to her, mutilating them and casting them aside, tossing them against walls to get to her. After everyone else is gone, she raises her arm to protect herself as Mr. Bonzo gently raises her arm into its mouth and biting it off. Bennett says none of them were left whole, but that she was the luckiest. She had only lost her hand, and nothing that it was luckily not her dominant one. She does not know how there were no other witnesses or camera footage, nor why she was left alive, but she does know that there were not any bodies. Bennett says she really wants her hand back, but the next best thing she can do is sue her employer. She does not know what happened that night, but that it was at their venue and nobody came to help. She threatens to sue the company unless they have one hell of a settlement. This is when we hear Gwen, horrified, until Alice enters asking if she was okay, to which Gwen responds that she had to see one of the external agents. Alice then comforts her by stating that she had to work in civil service in the past, and she's used to working with annoying consultants. Gwen asks Alice if she knows what they are actually doing at the OIAR, to which Alice replies that she does know. Alice knows exactly what's going on at the OIAR. Because here at the OIAR, they are working for one of the most unspeakable evils known to mankind. The UK government. Gwen then retorts that Alice is useless as always. On to Mag Protocol episode number 13, titled Futures. This one is one of my favorites of this second batch in part 2 of these protocol episodes. No, it isn't read to us by one of the boys, but we do get a couple of guest voices that we'll learn about. So, Sam and Celia are on a date together. Celia admits to having asked Alice about Sam. She proceeds to tease him, saying that, oh, you're stubborn, you're this, you're that, the other, that's what, she tells me, sort of stuff. Sam suggests that they discuss their quote-unquote baggage to avoid uncomfortable revelations later on. Celia reveals that she has a baby named Jack, which clarifies what we were learning about the prior episode. Sam states that he was a gifted kid and that his parents enrolled him into many enrichment programs, but the Magnus Institute was the first one to deny him. He went to Nottingham because he didn't get into Oxford, and he later worked for a law firm, hoping to be sponsored for a law degree, but he was encouraged to leave after he had a breakdown during a presentation due to stress. He still has not told his parents that he had quit his previous job and that he started working at the OIAR 6 months later, thanks to Alice recommending it to him, who he also admits that the two have dated in the past before, which I suppose up to this point we've gotten hints about, but this is where we get, outright confirmed it. Celia then asks if Sam believes that the cases that they work with are real, and she admits to have been pretty sure that they're real, while Sam says that he doesn't know, he just hopes that they aren't. Fair enough, my boy. And this is when we cut to Lena's office, where Gwen is asking her about what the hell actually was up with the statement that we learned about last episode with Mr. Bonzo. Lena states that whatever Gwen read is true. Lena explains that the world is composed of opposing forces, some malevolent and some not, and that the OIAR enforces the balance between the two. So this is when Gwen asks, are we the bad guys? And Lena says, we are managing the bad guys. Lena concludes by saying that she sent Gwen another email because there is another external that needs assignment, and Gwen agrees to do it. And this is when we get cut into the case. So in this case, we actually get a couple of guest voices. Xena Carswell as the answer phone, and Ewan Shedden as Darian. So this is a recording of a call from the customer support line for the app Zorro Trade. After the caller, one Darian Laurel, pushed the number for complaints, the answer phone instructs to leave a message. Darren started talking and aggressively claiming that the app owes him money.
I'm here for money. Money!
He threatens to expose their projection trading to the ombudsman. He explained that he has been a user and has been investing for years. He got very defensive and explains that he is not a bad person just because he is rich, that he worked hard for his money. He goes on to describe his schooling, which he went to public school on a scholarship, but did not go to a university, as he immediately started using this app with his entire student loan. He explained how he originally got rich and that suddenly he was the one splurging when he met up with his friends. It was at one point he bet against someone bigger than him, and by going all in, he lost everything. Later on, while he was with one of his friends, Ollie, he noticed a new setting on the app, the personal projection short selling feature. He stated that it was automatically disabled and covered in disclaimers. Without any explanation, he explained that it was just a slider with the warning, "These settings are experimental and may not function as intended. User discretion is advised." Since he had already lost most of his fortune, he decided to try, and once he was asked for the investment amount, he went all in. Nothing happened, so he just ended up drinking more. And the next day, Ollie kicked him out, leaving him at the dock, and told everyone about his financial troubles. Darian explained that he found a group chat he was in full of messages, with everyone saying around the world, "End up back in the gutter eventually." When he tried to respond, his phone died, and since he was borrowing Ollie's charger at the time, he had no way of charging it. This is when he also notes that he tried asking like many other people to use his charger, and it took him like a couple hours to try and get some random people to let him use his charger to charge his phone. There is then a pause on the call, and Darian realizes that he had been talking for a while, but insists that they keep listening. He explained that he got mugged and beaten, taking all except his phone, and when he finally managed to borrow a charger, he got in contact with the British Embassy and was told to apply for an emergency travel permit. While he applied, he noticed a new deposit for £100,083.12. He also got a notification from the Zorotrade app saying that due to the change in his circumstances, his personal projection short sell was paid in full. He quickly understood that he used this app to bet against himself, to earn money. Nothing wrong in a little bit of light gambling of yourself, right? This is when he also gets defensive again, claiming that the app had not worked out all the bugs yet, and that there were some problems, but he still did nothing wrong. He was just using a loophole, that it wasn't fraud. He was, that's their fault that they didn't make sure everything fixed or everything was proper in their app. He did nothing wrong. He explained that he started to do some tests, like picking a fight with a bigger stranger or crashing a rented car into a tree, and that he spent the few weeks sabotaging his life and hurting himself until he reached $1 million. He describes the feeling as liberating and addictive. And then he decided to invest said $1 million to throw himself off a cliff. He had picked out the spot the day before, a cliff near Notre Dame du Mai, hoping that it would be high enough to not kill him, but still seriously injure him. While he reached the spot, he called his parents, telling them that he never loved them, and he hoped they died. He told his friends that he had slept with many of their partners, even though if he didn't. He publicly declared his affiliation with every messed up religion, group, just every messed up thing he could think of. And then he jumped. He then woke up in the Jean Martial Hospital after spending 2 days in a medical-induced coma, with one leg amputated and the other full of pins, a cracked spine, ruptured spleen, a cracked skull, and 6 broken ribs. He immediately went to check Zorotrade, and he saw that his balance was minus $50 million, with a notice saying, "Your payment has been suspended due to suspicious account activity, including potential insider trading. Official bodies have been notified. Please repay your outstanding balance or prepare for personal adjustment." He then asks again to get his money since he sacrificed everything for it. Lastly, he remembered to give his full name and his account number. The answer phone answers a metallic clittering that is described in the content wording as insectoid, as this noise starts to grow louder, and then Darian screams, asks for help, and then the call ends. So whatever that was probably his personal adjustment. After the case is finished, Alice asks Sam how the date with Celia went. Sam says that it was nice, but Alice buds in further about that. Sam tells her that he is not comfortable talking about how his dates go. He tells Alice that he wants to keep his interactions with her more professional going forward. Alice gets a bit hurt by this and tries to hide it, which is failing to do so. She deflects by joking about it, and Sam tells her to wait. He apologizes to Alice for saying that he wanted to be more professional, Alice banters with Sam and jokingly tells him never to tell her to be more professional again, and she will take a shit on his desk. And Sam says that is a reasonable response. Before Alice leaves, Sam tells Alice about how Celia and Sam spent most of the date discussing whether or not the case files at work are real or not. He asks Alice what she thinks about the matter, and she asks if it matters. She tells him to sober up, and as a comeback for earlier, tells him to keep it professional, saying it will be okay when she says it is. Sam then goes back to work. And nothing really more about this episode. I just really like the statement in this episode for some reason. This guy who is just so down on his luck. Not even so down on his luck. Just such a pompous shithead, as they say, to think that he is still owed money after he does everything for this app. And that, oh, it's not my fault that I, played the system. That's your guys. You didn't work out all the bugs. Oh no, I really like, the downfall of Durian Laurel. It just seemed like really, really good case that I really liked. Alright, so Mag Protocol episode number 14, Pet Project. Is the one I'm talking about right now. I don't know why I started off like that. Anyways, so in the pre-case, Celia and Alice are drinking a new blended coffee in the break room before Alice questions Celia about the date with Sam. Celia is vague about the context, describing as good before going into more detail, mentioning on how they mainly discussed work at the OIAR. Celia then goes on to describe Sam as intense, while Alice remarks he is infuriating. Alice then jokes that Sam would have taken her out for discount roses and 2-for-1 sushi. Celia retorts that she is more of a Lily's gal. Celia asks if her relationship with Sam will be a problem, to which Alice asks how she could possibly get by without Celia, with a heavy sarcasm. Alice continues to joke about Celia's concerns, joking that she is intimidated by her genius intellect and her desperately hot bod, and that Sam's masculinity is fragile before leaving. We then cut to the OIAR office, where Lena approaches Sam, asking him if he's seen Gwen and to send her to Lena's way if she does. And this is when we get into the case, which is read by your boy Chester, and there's also a guest writer for this one, and Sean Pellington, who was apparently a writer-director of a podcast called Wake of Corrosion, and other voice work for Fanscape, a fanfiction podcast, and the Silts Verses. So yes, the case read by Chester. This case takes the form of a report by Alyssa Beck, a pest control technician who is investigating a reptile emporium. The shopkeeper reported that he had seen a rat in the break room, and upon arriving at the location, Alyssa tells him that this most likely isn't the case. However, she notes on a strong order in the shop and clears the customers from the shop for a thorough investigation. The shopkeeper gets very agitated, resulting in an alteration in which he leaves a scratch on her arm. Alyssa starts her inspection in the break room, and there are bins containing unfinished food and empty mice packets, as well as sweets and crisp wrappers along the countertops. A strong smell of rotten food permeates in the room. Alyssa discovers a squirrel and leaves the window open before sealing the room. She goes to fetch a live trap from her truck and lets customers back into the shop floor. There is a hole in the break room wall leading to the adjacent room, where Alyssa assumes the squirrel traveled through. She requests a key and goes to the adjacent room, where she captures the squirrel. She starts writing a note on the lethargic state of the squirrel before suddenly being interrupted. When she starts again, the situation has drastically changed. She is no longer writing a report, she is now writing to her dad. She tells him that he has to know what happened and that it isn't his fault for not answering her calls. She explains that the room she caught the squirrel in is a CCTV office. Before she was about to head out, she saw the shopkeeper on the CCTV grabbing and urging a parent to buy a snake while their child was crying. All of a sudden, the shopkeeper assaulted the customer, and as the parent of the child escaped the shop, Alyssa noticed the shopkeeper had changed. He was bloated, swollen around the neck, and she saw something fall out of his mouth as he stumbled back. Then it was all still. All the customers had left and Alyssa assumed the shopkeeper was knocked out, but then he began to spasm. She thought at first he was having a seizure, but his throat began to swell even more, and his mouth gaping, opening wider and wider until his jaw cracked and snapped as it grew impossibly wide. Then a horde of snakes slithered out of his mouth, pushing through his deflating throat. The snakes completely hid in the floor, moving the man's body across the floor to the door where Alyssa was, and then she quickly locked the door. She says the office is a mess. Printouts, delivery notes, and a bunch of rejection letters from some institute that the shopkeeper had pinned to the wall with a kitchen knife. She is suddenly panicking as her throat starts to itch as well. She can hear snakes in the walls. She then suddenly realizes she forgot about the hole in the wall before quickly writing, "I love you, D.A." And it cuts off there. A little bit of a short one, but not horrible. I did like this one. After the case, Sam remarks that the mentioned institute could be any institute, not specifically the Magnus Institute, prompting Gwen to ask if he means the letters. Sam is startled by Gwen and declares that she should not sneak up on people, to which Gwen responds that he simply did not notice her. Gwen then gives him tips on case classification before offering him to check the binder. Sam informs her that Lena was looking for her and she seemed not happy. This causes Gwen to ask if he told Lena anything, to which Sam asks if there's anything wrong. Gwen remarks, "Nothing you can help with," before she leaves, telling Sam to focus on the caseload, stating that she does not have time for this. Hello, this is a little bit of a different setup for, Magnus Protocol episode 15, Well Run here. I'm actually joined by another good friend of the Magnusverse, Aiden.
Hello.
As we've done with the other episodes, what got you into the Magnus Archive?
I think it was you and a mutual friend of ours, Michael, who just kept telling me that it was really good and I should listen to it. I was also just kind of starved for a podcast at that point. I just said, sure, why not? I'll give it a try. And I listened to all of it. I think I finished before you did.
You did.
Is that correct? Yes.
Because I remember Michael told me about it on the on band tour. Like, I think it was our second band tour. And he told me about the first episode, and then I listened to it, and then I didn't for like another 4 months, and then I picked it back up.
Yeah.
So.
It's typically how it goes for...
Yes, but
a lot of us.
As we talked about before, this is your favorite Protocol episode.
This is
at least season 1.
This is my favorite first season Protocol episode, yes.
So, we shall begin in the pre-case. So, Sam invites Celia on their second date, which they go to a play called The Pillaman, written by Martin McDonough. Joking on how it was expensive and exclusive. Celia sarcastically remarks that The Pillaman is a very romantic choice for a second date. Before agreeing, Alice then joins the two, inviting both of them to a live playing of the Gladstone Arms by the band Penny for the Well at 10:30 p.m. the next day, which her little brother, or her brother, Luke Dyer, is also in said play. Celia then reveals that she is unable to, despite the fact that the band is playing last, due to her child sitter being unable to stay late.
That is one of my favorite moments of the entire series of just sitter, dog sitter?
Dog sitter.
No, child,
babysitter,
baby,
humankind.
Just, it's a really good way to kind of break up that whole conversation into just, it's a very nice and then just child sitter,
child dog.
Yeah.
So Alice is surprised that Celia has a child before Celia leaves. Sam remarking that she is clueless. This is when a feminine voice kicks off the statement, which I believe is voiced by Jesse Hawk. Is the voice actor of the voicemail. This feminine voice starts off the case, describing that the caller has reached Sentinel Tip-Off Hotline, a hotline for calling with information that may merit investigation for the public. We then hear a masculine voice, which I believe is Danny Scare as the caterer, who sounds like he's in a car, saying that he must report something to someone, and goes on describing his job. He's a caterer, and he has his own small catering business, He got a call a couple of months ago before this voicemail to go to a small event at the Witchenwood Hall in the Cotswolds. The family was having a party, a family shoot hunting game for the caterers to prepare. The family made it clear that they wanted the real animals they were killed to be prepared and to expect big game. The family was also very wealthy. When he and his crew got to the event, the shoot hadn't even started. After an hour or so, with people still arriving at the event, the family watched them prepare and gave them a center stage. Another half hour later, a man called for a butler and told the butler that unless there's something else going on here, that there won't be enough food, or food at all, in time. The butler only said one word before walking off: prepare. Finally, as the sun was starting to set, gunmen came out of the forest, with Winchesters and dogs. In front of them marched a woman, later revealed to be Lady Mulberry. Malbury, who is voiced by, Ellen Dickens. The caller described this woman as a matriarch, as if a Roman statue came to life and was given a gun. The caller notes that it reminded him of his days back in the army, how officials had the same look as she did. A look that says they don't see people as people, but rather assets and resistance. She carried a giant elephant gun on her back. Despite the size and firepower, it was extremely plain. With no real or mental qualities to it, she ordered her gunmen to stand by while the family went inside the house and watched. She loaded the rifle slowly, asking with each cartridge, "Are you prepared?" When the man tried to protest or ask for an explanation, her hand shot up, and he felt he was gagged by her force. She then walked back, giving one simple demand: hunt. Then the small group of caretakers did not respond. She shouldered the rifle, shooting one of the caretakers in the head. She then aimed at the caller and said, "Hunt," with a wide smile and playful eyebrows. The caller then describes the visceral murder of his staff. He had taken the cleaver in front of him and lodged it into the saucier's face, and then turned to the rest of his staff, saying the family ate a lot in under half an hour. Not only that, but he describes multiple of the staff's members' escape attempts, saying he thought one of them might have been begging when he caught them, but that he couldn't hear anything. As he was packing up, the woman shook his hand, complimenting him, and he was given an envelope full of cash and a note that only read, "Run." The caller says he did. He'd been on the run for a while now. He can't stay in one place, and he keeps hearing dogs barking. Mid-sentence, he is cut off, and all that can be heard saying is him softly, a soft "oh no," as a gunshot crashing through the car window, as we hear a wet explosion as he dies on the spot, a voicemail with some slight distortion and crackling as the woman yanks the car door open. Dogs growl behind her. She says, "Well run, dearie," and the line is lost. Yes, very interesting statement, considering this everything to do with protocol, and as we learn in the season 1 Q&A, alchemy and various different, not just fear as in with archives, but this new sort of system, which I hope we begin to learn about in season 2, especially with the trailer.
Yes, I also want to know more about this Sentinel.
Yeah,
Sentinel group. Is that
I
have
believe
we learned much about them yet?
Well, I don't think we learn a lot about it, but I think there is some theory that it is connected to the the security group. I'm dumbing on this. Leave me a moment.
Yeah, because I mean, a separate entity that back in Magnus Archives, everyone usually just got funneled to Magnus. So hearing that there are several groups that do this, I want to learn more about it.
But anyways, in the post case, Celia is surprised that Lady Mulberry is in the office after the case, her dogs growling threateningly. Mulberry then begins to sniff Celia and asks her for her name. She then remarks further that she is an odd one, before sniffing again. Celia tells her that she is not meant to be in the office, to which Lady Mulberry retorts that she was invited. Before describing Celia as a fine specimen, Gwen then asks Mulberry to come with her, asking if she is hungry, to which she responds that she has recently eaten. Mulberry then asks if she was of the Cheshire Bouchards. Then the door closes before Gwen's response is heard. Then we cut to a phone line where Luke and Alice are chatting after his performance, discussing Luke's tour with the Dredgermen, his band that we learned about earlier. Before Luke remarks that he hasn't seen Sam in a while, Luke then decides to order 2 pints of beer called Doom Bar for himself and Alice since the performance is over. We then cut after the fact, I believe another landline phone, where Alice encounters a stranger after the show, who shuffles towards her while mumbling the sensations of drowning being described to it. This person is voice acted by Laura Sawala.
Sawala?
That's what I'm going with.
If we are pronouncing that horribly, please correct us in the comments, because
Alice is left confused as they drop to the floor, this woman clutching her at her throat and choking her. The stranger then grabs onto her, causing Alice to throw them off to the ground, where they begin to writhe. Alice calls 999, but the stranger chokes to death while she is on the phone. Alice hangs up with 999, and an impossible amount of water begins flooding out of the stranger's lungs. Alice attempts to give them CPR to no avail. She notices that there is a tape recorder next to the body as the corpse begins to mumble again, despite already being dead. Alice drops the tape recorder and then leaves. That's mostly this episode, other than the fact that there was apparently an alternate title for this episode being Good Show. Either could have worked, in my opinion. That is basically this episode.
that's the entirety of it.
Very, very good one.
Very good one.
Anything else?
Anything else I'd like to say?
Anything else? This is probably, this is your first appearance on the show.
First and hopefully not last.
You're probably going to join for some other archives episodes.
Yeah, even if I'm not directly on screen,
Of course.
I've spoken about sitting in with you guys while you do it. Yeah, so hello everyone, first appearance. Probably should have said that when we started this and not at the tail end of it.
Oh, don't worry, this happens a lot.
Oh, does it? Great, wonderful.
Again, you have not listened to any of my videos,
I haven't. No, I'm one of his best friends in the real world, and I have not watched
Lies.
I watched one episode this morning when you told me
Which one?
the first one.
The one of me?
When you told me when you
With the fucking MS Paint drawings?
when you told me that I was going to be involved, I was like, okay, so I need to watch at least one of them, and then I watched that one, and I re-listened to episode 15 this morning as well. So
anyways, back to me, continuing with the rest of part 2 of Protocol Bash.
Mag Protocol, episode 16, Antisocial. Wow, is this one a lot? This one is also really good. I really like this one a lot. So, it starts off with Sam offering tea to Alice, as Celia asks if everything is okay, implying that Alice told them about what happened in the last episode, with experiencing a person drowning in real time, sort of thing. Alice responds shaken from her encounter in the alleyway, and she says that she is alright, but has not seen someone die since cutting off and then Sam saying it's okay. Alice continues saying that she returned to the area to find that the paramedics said that the woman had been long dead, but Alice swears she heard the stranger talking about drowning and that there was no sign of the tape recorder it was holding. Sam and Celia say that they believe Alice before she stops the conversation saying it's time to get back to work with a joke, as Alice is one to do. Basically, she says that, oh, I wonder, what Freddy will tell me about, this experience I just had. And then Sam says, oh, so would that be Z for zombie? And then there's just a pause as he leaves then. This is when we get to the case, which is a few different blog videos by a woman who goes by Madam Electrum, who is voiced by Kai Griffin, who's been in a couple other different works, a couple different shows, it looks like. Kindred fitting in Hollyoaks, if any of you have ever heard of those. This Madam Electrum, she addresses her viewers directly and talks excitedly about how she has been offered a free tattoo by Inksoul, who we hear for the first time, I believe, voiced by Vera Choke, who has a lot on their IMDb. some other things known for the Hollyoak, Fortitude, Brawn Theater Live, The Winter's Tale, and Chimera. So we hear Inksoul putting on their glove as they ask Madame Electric if she's ready. As they begin to work on her, Madame Electric groans in distress before falling silent. A unspecified amount of time later, Madame E comes around asking if they're done. Sounding visibly confused and concerned, Inksoul just tells her to leave. In a different blog, Madame Electric says that she will finally talk about the drama involving Inksoul. Since she got her heart tattoo, her life has been incredible. She has been texting with Inksoul, flirting and wanting to know where they get their inspiration, but Inksoul keeps their secrets and the two fell out of contact. Madame E says that after some time she received a message from Inksoul asking whether she's truly goth. Madame E responded that she's more goth than they could handle. They replied with a what 3 words location, summoning her to Highgate Cemetery. Madame E snuck into the cemetery where Inksoul told her to follow them to one of the graves, holding a shovel before telling her to dig. She refuses repeatedly, and Inksoul responded, "Don't make me break your heart." Madame E says that she could feel the words in her chest, and then she left. Madame E recounts on how she heard the news about someone breaking into Highgate Cemetery to rob graves. She says that she won't call it in, but speculates that Inksoul's inspiration might come from corpses. She ends the video after saying that she is completely done with Inksoul. And then we get to the next blog. She sounds tired and unwell as she describes how Inksoul has spoken poorly of her on their channels, which has led to Madame Electra receiving death threats and being doxxed. She says that the police came by asking if she was the one that broke into Highgate Cemetery. The comments have caused pain into her heart, and she shows her viewers physical marks. She decides to take time away from social media and then ends the video. And then there is an unposted blog video that starts playing of Madame Electrum's voice low and croaky, and a heart monitor is audible in the background. She had to leave her home after her door was set on fire and is now in the hospital with heart problems. The doctors say it's infection due to the tattoo. Her mom thinks that it's just stress. She also says that it's probably more than that. She says that she just wanted to be noticed and she doesn't deserve this and begs for it to stop. The views are cutting her. The comments hurt. This is when the heart monitor starts to beep loudly and Madame Electric starts to choke before the video ends with the sounds of flesh tearing off. And in the transcript, I'm gonna pull a Hazel and read it verbatim. She struggles to breathe. An alarm starts beeping. There is a sound of tearing skin and a gurgling sound, as though something were tearing itself free from her flesh. So that is where the case ends. And then Sam asks Celia if she's okay. Alice responds harshly that she's fine and angrily says that she's gonna get a coffee. Sam and Celia then follow her, and then Gwen walks in, seemingly frustrated that there's no one working at the computers. And then we hear Lena angrily knocking on the office door to get Gwen's attention. Then we cut to Lena's landline, and after Gwen enters the office, Lena accuses her of being stupid. Before asking, "Are you stupid?" like 2 different times, she asks how she could let an external like Lady Marlbury into the building. Gwen says she thought it might be safer if she was in a controlled environment. Lena has been sending Gwen out alone to meet dangerous externals, and Gwen agrees not to bring any more externals into the office. Gwen says that she will consider giving Gwen more training after Gwen basically says that, well, if I had proper training, if I knew about these people, maybe I would know better. And Lena says no, and then asks to leave the room. Again, this one was a really good episode. I really liked this one. Apparently it had an alternate title called Heartless. And then here's the other thing that is noted. So, Highgate Cemetery. Some of you Magnus Archives listeners might have recognized that of a special Magnus Archives episode titled What the Ghost, Episode 2, Highgate Cemetery. This was an old bonus episode in the Magnus Archives. Alright, Magnus Protocol episode 17, Saved Copy. We hear on Celia's phone that she wakes up on a train track, hearing the train almost run her over. She then exclaims in frustration before calling someone and hurrying away from the tracks. We then cut into the OIAR, where Celia apologizes profusely to Sam since she had missed their date. Sam is obviously disappointed. She then promises that next they go out, it will be her treat. Cheering up Sam slightly, Celia then lies that she had gone to Oxford and that there were no trains nor signal to tell Sam that she would not be able to come. Again, hearing those little, static noises whenever someone lies is very interesting. Sam then states that he had enjoyed the movie, remarking, however, that it might not have been too romantic, but surely spooky. Celia teases Sam that he would have found a way to make it romantic if they were together. Sam stumbles over some words and says that she would have to find out on the next date then. Sam then tells her that she'll meet her in the office, to which then Celia, left by herself for a moment, says to herself that she will be okay. And again, the little little noise clicks on as well. The case starts off with Chester reading a statement and research assessment from the Magnus Institute, gotten from Welling Mutara Materia research program, about a man named Darian who has anger management issues. Darian recounts how he went to therapy with Dr. Dumfries, who has been trying to teach him on how to meditate. For the first time, Darian gets in, but then something changes. His first thought is that he could be dreaming, but he dismisses this as he has never felt pain like this in his dream, or in a dream. As he tries to leave the building, Dr. Dumfries is nowhere to be seen. As he leaves the building, he falls over again. The last thing he remembers seeing before falling unconscious is that he was in a shopping center, seeing a sign saying Magnus Institute Outreach Center. Waking up in the ambulance, he is asked what happened. As Darian looks around, he sees his skinny frame before falling unconscious again. He woke up again in the hospital where he told his story, but no one believed him. After some time, the hospital worker got Darian's address and sent him away. Along the way, Darian noticed that the bus driver had gotten the wrong address and had sent him to Banbury. When he was left alone with nowhere to go, Darian went and knocked on Harcourt House, hoping for a ride. As the door opens, Darian was surprised, finding an exact copy of himself looking back. As other Darian invited Darian inside, first saw all the differences, calling other Darian the better version of himself. He rationalizes their similar appearances as the other Darian being his half-brother, lamenting that his abusive father must have been living another life while he was putting Darian through hell. Darian goes on to tell him what had happened to him in the waiting room, as well as oversharing on why he was in therapy, as other Darian listens intently until both find out that Darian's dad had died from a tumor, while other Darian's dad was perfectly fine. In the end, other Darian offers him to stay. Darian accepts, too tired to argue. And in the morning, Darian wakes up to keep talking about their lives, as other Darian is excited to have someone to talk to that understands. A couple of days later, other Darian tells Darian about his time in Oxford and how he did boxing back then. Seeing his chance, Darian asks if that's how he coped with his anger. Other Darian gives Darian a look and says, "I've been waiting for you to ask," walking off, going down to the basement with Darian following behind. Other Darian walks towards a locked, soundproof door. After placing the key in, other Darian unlocks it, and Darian looks down to a stainless steel room, with his dad at the end on the stairs weakly asking for death. The other Darian comes closer and tells him he would like it and to go down. Darian refuses. Other Darian gets angry, and Darian shoves the other Darian, who falls, breaking his arm and hitting his temple on the stairs. Darian doesn't have the courage to go down and instead closes the door. Darian now has been living as other Darian for 4 years now. He says that he did nothing wrong and that he is a better Darian than the other ever was and calls it a happy ending. Very weird one this is. Celia then says to herself not exactly the same before Alice takes out her earbuds and asks if it was a good one. They then agree that a few cases are good. This is when Alice's computer gets a .jmj error and Gwen attempts to resolve it. She then suggests that the shortbread crumbs left in between the keys of Alice's keyboard probably aren't helping, to which Alice retorts that her suggestion is ridiculous. Alice then suggests that she should seek out Colin, as Celia had supposedly mentioned seeing him, to which Gwen states that Colin should not be at the OIAR for weeks. Gwen attempts to ask Alice if there is something that she needs to share, Alice replying that she does not unless Gwen has something to share. Gwen denies this after short consideration before eventually resolving the error. This one is interesting. We learn a bit more information about Celia, in the sense that she randomly wakes up in random locations. The same thing happened in Mag episode 11, and the reaction in that episode implies that this has happened more than once. Probably a routine thing. Little trivia fact that we get in this episode. So when the man, Darian, is first in the office for therapy, he describes two individuals, a receptionist and another patient. The receptionist that he describes is, and I quote, "There was a new receptionist behind the old front desk, some big soft-looking guy who stumbled over every word. And there was another one, some bookish-looking guy with serious city miles. And to Darian, he was definitely some kind of weird pervert, really into stroking orchids or something." So these two descriptions are very likely of the Protocol universe's Martin Blattwood and the boy Jonathan Sims, which is very funny as they describe Jonathan Sims as a bookish looking pervert that strokes orchids. Mag Protocol episode 18, Solo Work. The episode starts with Alice's phone turning on as we hear her walking, and she spots Teddy, who is leaving the courthouse of the Royal Mint Court. Alice talks with him and teases him about who he's into. She asks why he's at her workplace, questioning if he missed all of them in the office that much. He says that he had interviewed and that the Royal Mint Court has multiple businesses, including the OIAR. He says he has been better, and Alice comments on how much she misses him, telling him to respond to her text messages. Teddy then says he's got to go. As he runs off, Alice says to herself, "Look after yourself, Teddy." We cut to the break room where Sam is sipping on coffee as Lena walks in. Sam comments on how he rarely ever sees her in there. She says she forgot to fill her thermos. After a long moment of awkward silence, Lena asks why Sam seems unsettled and if he had a difficult case. He says no, and that he's just nervous since he doesn't see his boss that often. She questions why she would ever need to talk to him, and she tells him to take her silence as a compliment since she would only go to him if there was a problem. Sam asks if Celia will be in, to which Lena says no, saying that there was a childcare emergency. This is when we get to the case, who is read by Augustus. This is an autopsy report being performed by a Dr. S. Rashid. The body is Violet Abigail Parker. She was found clothed in the middle of Milton Court open space. The esteemed time of death was 3 a.m. on the 20th of March of 2024. Her body was found in the state of extreme malnutrition, with tissue damage on both feet and stress fracture on the left ankle. In the examiner's comments, Dr. Rashid is saying he hopes no one reads this and that if she doesn't talk again, then they can just burn these notes. They explain that during the autopsy, the body started talking, reciting a story that they estimated was related to her death. Her thorax was open and neither her lungs nor her heart were functional when she started talking. Dr. Rashid continues saying they transcribed some of it. The transcription begins mid-sentence. The body is talking about her mother telling her not to go into the house on Church Street. Her mother describes the house as having thousands of rooms and passageways, locked doors and rotten wood, as well as sharp rusty nails upturned on the floors. She said that even if you were to not get hurt while there, you will simply walk in and walk till your feet break and starve to death. The mother says she would not come for her if she went inside, and the body says she never went into that house on Church Street. However, the corpse says that she had been in that house on Church Street her entire life. She has to do what everyone says, do chores for others, give her mother her money, or else they wouldn't come back to get her. That she will be alone in the house. She says she dreams of the house and is still dreaming. She recounts when she was 15 and had a poetry assignment, Wordsworth's I wandered lonely as a cloud. She imagined clouds and fog flowing through the house, choking and hiding her, so that those who ever looked inside would never see her. Daffodils of moundering yellow pushed through the rotting wood and were her only company. Ever since, the house was forever in fog and rotten yellow. The house on Church Street was torn down when she was 10, but it was too late. With the help of her mother, she built a new house. Inside her mind, where no one will ever find her and no one would ever think to look. Now she's there, questioning who brought her there, recalling some figure asking questions in an alley, but then loses her thought and goes on about how there is no one here. Her belly is swollen, her throat aches. She must be careful on the steps or the rotten wood will break. She must be careful looking for nails. She must be careful not to get splinters. The nails will give her tinnitus, the fall will break her legs, and the splinters will turn into gangrene. All while the daffodils watch, wilt, and laugh. Her story ends with, I wander lonely, I wander lonely. I will die in this place and no one will miss me. We then hear Alice typing on her computer as Sam comes over to say if she was listening to the case. Alice denies it, saying she was occupied on a different case. She said it was one about a guy who had a backwards face who was on a ceiling staring while watching some other guy sleep. Sam goes to say that the case and the lady that Alice met in the alleyway back in Mag Protocol episode 15 might have something in common. Alice sarcastically says if she should start a pinboard on similar cases and that Sam's idea is bad. And then Sam says, now we know there's something out there. Alice counters by saying there might be millions of things out there. Getting angry towards Sam, Alice says that she doesn't want to know anymore, saying it messed her up. As Gwen walks in the room, Alice goes on to ask if there are problems in paradise, as Sam speaks up to say that Lena has been on Gwen's case a lot recently. As Gwen says everything is fine, ends up spilling to Sam and Alice, saying that the external cases are not fun and that they are not people. Sam is intrigued about the non-people. Gwen goes on saying she goes to places where the people aren't alright and who cause the cases. Her job is to meet with them and to pass work on to them. Sam asks if she has any examples. Gwen attempts to talk about the Mr. Bonzo but before she's finished, Sam bursts out laughing, believing that she is joking. Gwen screams for him to shut up as she starts to cry and runs away. Sam wants to go after Gwen, but Alice turns her back and says she can't hear Sam asking her to go see Gwen. We hear Sam walk away and the computer turns off. This is when we hear a landline that I believe is Celia's, and Georgie talking as Georgie is playing with Celia's kid, Jack. For Magnus Archives listeners again, and those who've have already listened to all this already, Georgie Barker, who has voiced Sasha Sienna, presumably Protocol Universe's Georgie Barker, who is a babysitter as well. Georgie tells Celia that she doesn't need to leave and then to call her to babysit. Celia says she called afterward because it was an emergency to get baby food. Georgie points out that there is plenty of baby food in the cabinet. Georgie goes on to ask if Celia is spying on her for the government. Celia says no and promises. Georgie believes her. And she asks Celia if she had been out all this time in your pajamas, implying Celia had woken up in a different location once again. Oh boy, Mag Protocol episode 19, Hard Reset, as it was alternately titled, Action and Reaction. So, in the break room, Sam and Celia are talking. Sam notices that Celia researching alchemy, and she claims that she is just curious about it. And again, we hear the little audio that indicates she's lying. Sam explains that he recognizes it from his research into the Magnus Institute, which he says they had been really deep into researching alchemy as well. Celia asks about his research, and Sam responds that he might drop it, saying he doesn't have time for it. As Sam says he'll go back to work, Celia jokingly says if anything comes up about the Magnus Institute, she'll keep it quiet. Sam says he wouldn't go that far, still showing interest in the Magnus Institute. This is where we hear Chester. This case is a little ridiculous, not in a bad sense. You'll see why. As a computer turns on, we hear Chester read out a case where a man named Robert Hooke writes a letter to Robert Boyle talking about the dubious practices of Isaac Newton. Robert Hooke goes on to say that he hopes this letter doesn't strain their friendship, even more knowing that Boyle has always looked up to Newton and has always been at odds with the both of them. Hooke can't deny that Newton's works had many times assisted his own researches, but Newton's latest research had gone too far. Hooke now has no opinion but to tell Boyle to enact a protocol. He goes on to say he knows the last time they talked, he was the one wanting to push the limits on science, trying to find a cure for a plague. But now he needs Boyle's help to stop Newton and his experiment. He is sure Newton's fruits of labor will lead to many deaths. Hooke goes on to say it all started when Newton invited him to work on his newest research, not knowing what it was. Hooke went to visit Newton in his laboratory in Trinity. As he got to his place, Newton's dog would not stop worrying his coattail. As Newton invited Hooke into the library, Hooke noticed a big flask that contained a substance that could dazzle the eyes. As Hooke questioned the flask, Newton disinterestedly responded that he perfected the work of Wilhelm Homburg, calling it the Arbor Philosophorum Perfecta. As Hooke took a deeper look, he saw a metallic tree was inside the flask. Newton offered Hooke to taste the tree's fruit, and when Hooke declined, Newton fed the fruit to the dog while quoting in Latin God's warning to Adam not to partake of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. After eating the fruit, the dog's hair began to form roots and branches, and in its eyes, Hooke saw something like recognition of an equal intellect. Newton poured some of the substance from the large flask onto the dog, reverting it to its original state, and then Robert Hooke fled. Sir Isaac Newton, the gravity guy. In the post case, Sam asks Celia if Freddy is somehow able to listen in on their conversations, since so many of the cases he seems get to point back towards the Magnus Institute. Alice brutesquely denies this, and again warns Sam to not pay attention too much to the cases, or he'll end up like Colin. We cut then to Lena's office, where Gwen tries to get Lena to give her some kind of security when she goes out to see the next Eternal, even bringing up Starkwall security. Lena tells her that Starkwall tends to escalate things rather than help, and Gwen will be fine going out on her own. We again cut back to Alice as she goes in to check on Colin at his flat. He demands that she let him destroy her phone because they can't let him know how much they know because he's seen too much already, doing mummy and daddy study Stasi proud. He mentions that there is a balance keeping disasters from happening. Not too much mercury or the world ends, not too much sulfur or we all go mad. When Alice refuses to hand over the phone, Colin slams the door shut in her face. So a shorter one this time around, but a lot to talk about. So, the previous use of the protocol to destroy a plague seems to line up with the occurrence of the Great Fire of London in September of 1666, implying that the fire there was a result of the protocol in this timeline rather than an accident, in the real world. The Great Fire of London, that basically being a massive fire that lasted like 4 days in 1666 inside of the medieval city of London. Apparently it was thought that the death toll was generally small. Historians believe that had changed. And Arbor Philosopharum translates from Latin into the philosopher's tree, also known as the Diana's tree, a dendritic amalgam of silver crystals extracted from mercury in a solution of silver nitrate. It was also thought in many spheres of alchemy to be a precursor or imperfect form of a philosopher's stone. A philosopher's stone was a hypothetical alchemical substance that could transmutate other metals into gold when mixed and heated, and additionally used to achieve rejuvenation or immortality. In real life, in the real world, there is a manuscript on the creation of the philosopher tree by Isaac Newton. However, whether or not he attempted to create it is unknown, as he was secretive regarding his alchemy, and much of his work was lost in a fire supposedly started by his dog. I don't know, this was just a really fun episode to listen to. Mag Protocol, Episode 20, Social Stigma. This episode begins with Sam, Alice, and Celia as they all discuss the OIAR's involvement with Starkwall, the Magnus Institute, and the Protocol, which they suspect destroyed the Magnus Institute. Sam states that he supposedly got an email from a mysterious sender filled with files between Starkwall and William Price, who used to run the OIAR response department, which all but prove that the OIAR and Starkwall were responsible for the destruction of the Institute. Alice then strongly recommends the three don't delve further, stating she doesn't want anyone to get hurt and called the British government a vicious petty machine. Celia suggests the protocol potentially being the murder of the Institute isn't strictly a bad idea, as they've been looking into dangerous things and it may have been a lesser of two evils. Sam says it leaves them working for evil nonetheless. Alice states that she does not want to be involved at all. Celia, however, states she wants to be kept up to date. This is when we cut to Gwen, who finds Inksoul to recruit them as an external for the OIAR, to which Inksoul brushes it off at first until Gwen reveals that she knows Inksoul's nature. Inksoul pushes Gwen to give more information as to what they are, but Gwen only knows that they are called an external, noting that it could be to the department and society as a whole. Inksoul begins to detail how they became what they are currently. All Inksoul wanted was views online, and is currently hiding from their followers in an old warehouse. Inksoul recalls having so many followers as weird and even addicting if you aren't careful. Inksoul then goes on to describe the odd relationship they formed between themselves and their fellowship, which actually begins our case, which for the first time this season isn't actually a case read out by the Freddy program, and actually just a live, statement from the person giving it. They eventually gained a short burst of notoriety due to an accident on a tattoo of a wolf they had done, making it seem like as if the wolf was smirking. This post was then reposted by Hell Yes Tattoos, which in turn caused a massive burst of notoriety after their viewership plateaued. They begin intentionally doing lackluster tattoos to regain their notoriety to little effect, only leading them to getting a black eye, Inksoul getting desperate, wanting to be seen again. They once again get popularity from recreating a tattoo by the work of Oscar Jarrett on a client as closely as they could, who is found out to be a pupil of the Sutherland MacDonald, a famous tattoo artist from the Victorian era. All the works that Jarrett did never faded, and the skin in the ink on never decayed. So they were always able to find themselves on the deceased clients. As well, Oscar Jarrett used to do hand-taped tattoos with sharpened human bones, mixing strange chemicals into his ink. Inksoul's newer works were inspired or copied from Jarrett's works, as they were the only way they could get the attention they sought. Inksoul tattooed his design on a man that copied from Jarrett's work, regardless of what their client actually requested. The tattoo burned the man, as he began to scream and the smell of burning skin began to fill the room. However, Inksoul notes that there didn't seem to be any burning on the skin at all. The client later died in a house fire. Inksoul states that there were other instances where after the client received a tattoo based on Jarrett's work, they died in disturbing accidents. The police noticed the connection between their tattoos and their clients dying in terrible accidents, leading them to go into hiding. Although they are in hiding, clients are still drawn to them, their tattoos starting to change as they begin to look for fear in clients right before they went under for the tattoo. The remark that Jarrett's work is of little matter to Inksoul now, only noting that they only tattoo clients for the fear they give after the enjoyment they derive from the fear. After Inksoul tells all of this, this is when Gwen pushes probably a little too much more to get Inksoul to sign on to being an external. Inksoul refuses, but then Gwen does the stupid thing and pushes harder, sarcastically saying that Inksoul has more than enough ink left to sign in paper. In response, Inksoul threatens to tattoo her, much to Gwen's horror, before recommending that Gwen should run. And that's where the episode leaves off. But anyways, this has been part 2 of Protocol Bash, the 3-part series on the Analyzing Archivists channel in lead up to Season 2 of the Magnus Protocol on February 27th. Hopefully with part 3, my co-host Hazel will be with us to discuss all of the wonders of the episode 21 up to the season finale, so we can be properly prepared for the arrival of season 2. So I hope you all enjoyed this. Again, another lengthy video. Please subscribe, like, leave any thoughts down below, and I will see you all in part 3. They claim that the tattoo they claim that the tattoo is an